Yeah, well, with the creatures, it was very much, we didn't have the budget for CGI, and at the same time, I'm a little bored of CGI in contemporary movies. I feel that the creatures are all a little bit samey, and there's an obsession with hyper-realistic detail. And, I grew up in the 80s, so I love Gremlins and Ghostbusters and Critters and E.T., and I love practical effects, and I know a lot of filmmakers say that now, and often they say that, and then when you see the film, it's all CG. But we couldn't afford CG, so that was a limitation that I thought was also an opportunity to go back to that old school feel. So we have, our creatures are a man in a suit. It's this guy, Terry Notary, who worked on Avatar and Fantastic Four and Hulk and Silver Surfer, and he's in a costume designed by Spectral Motion that do all Guillermo del Toro's work, and then we used CG to actually take away detail and make them into these sort of shadow puppets almost. But that for me was an exciting kind of meeting point of CGI and practical, and I thought by making them almost like two-dimensional animation, I always hoped we could create a creature that felt a little bit old school, but also unlike anything you'd kind of seen before. And I'm pleased you like them, yeah, because I really had no idea how people would react to them. When we first showed the film at South by Southwest, I had no idea how people would respond to them. So, I always thought of Attack the Block as like the most terrifying and irresponsible episode of Sesame Street ever made. And go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you do cite Critters, you cite Goonies. This has been compared to, for obvious reasons, Shaun of the Dead and District 9. But it's its own beast, isn't it? Where did you want to go, and what did you want to avoid?
Well, I'm good friends with Edgar Wright, and I've known him for years and years, and the guy's a genius, and he has a very particular visual style and flavor. So I didn't want to be accused of copying or cashing in any way. So I wanted to make sure I did something different. I was very directly inspired by John Carpenter, and particularly, John Carpenter and Romero, in the sense that Night of the Living Dead, as well as being an amazing zombie movie, has a very interesting racial and political subtext to it, as does Assault on Precinct 13. And I really was interested in, for me, the best science fiction is a way of looking at the present as much as imagining the future or some parallel reality. And the thing that made me make the film is my concern for the kids that are depicted in it. And, we shot the film, and the film is set in the area where I grew up. And really, beyond being a sci-fi movie or a monster movie, it's an actual quite sincere, heartfelt plea towards kids like that, who I think exist in all cities all over the world, and in particularly teenagers who, when they get together, are very strong. Teenagers have a lot of energy and a lot of humor and a lot of strength. And I wanted to show that if you're not careful and you don't care for them, then that can go wrong. And also I wanted to show that in the right circumstances, kids like that energy can be used terrifically positively, So that's really why I made the film. It's all about those kids, and it's all about what they do at the beginning of the film, the bad thing that they do, and it's all about what they learn from that and the consequences of it. So it's really trying to be a kind of an allegory in a way.
Do you feel that British film and television leans, especially genre materials, leans more towards the anti-hero than the hero? I mean, in the movie Sam says to herself, you're not heroes, and then there's things like Misfits and even Shaun of the Dead.
I certainly think that's probably true, especially with Misfits, and with like Guy Ritchie's films and, Jonathan Glazer's stuff. But I think that's maybe just the advantage of being an independent filmmaker, that if you get it right and you work with the right people, it's easier to make an unmediated statement. There's less interference and less politics, and I'm kind of guessing because this is my first film, but that's the sense I get. I also think that narrative has become very conservative in contemporary movies. You know, it's very difficult to think of a villain, which is why so many movies are science fiction or period pieces. It's very difficult to think of a villain in a contemporary movie that isn't somehow politically incorrect or insulting somebody. And I think movies personally, the 70s and 80s, movies felt a bit more adventurous in their narrative structure. And a lot of the time when I go to the movies, I feel like I'm seeing the same story. Kind of over and over again, not in the detail, but in terms of the overall structure, the way the lead character is made very empathic in the first 10 minutes, the way the first inciting incident will happen exactly on 15, you know, the way the progressive complications will happen between Act 2 and Act 3, and, you know, you can... I don't know, and it felt to me things used to be a bit more interesting. You know, in literature they certainly are. I don't know. I don't know quite what it is, but that was the feeling I got, and I was excited to make a film where the lead characters start by doing something really bad. And I knew it would freak some people out, but I thought, you know, fuck it. There you go.
Joe, we don't get hardly any backstory on the aliens in the movie, but I know as a storyteller, you know the backstory. So give us a little more than we get in the film. You must have it in your head.
Well, the backstory is pretty much what Bruce says towards the end of the film, and I wouldn't want to give it away for people who haven't seen the movie. Oh. That's your spoiler alert act going on.
That's the asshole alert. I'm sorry.
There you go.
I can't turn it off.
Turn it off, bro. Turn it against the wall.
Look, he's panicking. He's panicking. I'm going to keep talking. So it's basically what Bruce says. I always imagine them like, okay, here it is. Stamp on it.
Whoa. Oh. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry.
That was dramatic, but we can still hear it.
I can still hear it.
I realized I forgot to turn it off, and I didn't want to make it
That's
beep.
okay. No, we're going to get used to it. We're going to get used to
Sorry.
it. So here's the thing. They come from either a low gravity or a volcanic planet. They live on this planet. Part of their reproductive or breeding cycle is they exude some kind of weird substance that solidifies around them like a cocoon. Then either solar winds or the low gravity or a volcanic eruption blows them into orbit. The female first because she's lighter, the males because they're heavier, and then they just drift through space like spores or pollen until they hit something. And the rest is explained in the movie. But I've got a weird picture in my head of this volcanic planet where they live, which is very, you know, deep black, charcoaly rock, and then the bright, glowing embers of the volcanoes, like the design of the film, you know, fluorescence and darkness. But I don't know whether that's biologically feasible. I'll have to ask David Attenborough. I'll have to use my contacts at the BBC to try and get the team behind the series Earth to figure out whether that's feasible.
Right on, thanks.
So, Joe, they say that you should never work with children or animals, and you work with children and fake animals and special effects. Was there any point during the filming where you wished you just written a quiet drama instead?
No, and you know what? That's what Edgar said to me. He said you've made it as hard as possible. Right. We did all the things you're not supposed to do: children, animals, stunts, special effects, costume performers, all at night, pyrotechnics, explosions, slang, multicultural cast. It's everything you're not supposed to do. But I'm very pleased we did. You know, I figured, you know, in the UK in particular, there are a lot of first-time film directors, not that many second-time film directors, and very few third-time directors. And I figured if I'm going to have one shot, why not be ambitious? And if it fucks up, at least I tried. And if it's in any way successful, then it will have been worth it. Plus, movies for me aren't about talk. They're not. They're about a good movie for me. You switch the sound down and it'll work. So I wanted to make a film about movement, kinetics, things happening, action, character development through action. I wanted to make a film about people doing things right. rather than talking about them. So I think as soon as you make that decision, you end up with all the cool stuff.
Speaking of kinetics and also going back to Origins before, it's like, I mean, clearly all of the kids in the movie are impossibly developed and incredibly well-rounded characters.
Thank you.
One of the things, one of my personal favorite moments in the movie is when they race down the stairs and each stop off at their different floor to go arm themselves. And with that, was that something that you built into full backstories and then just pared it down to as little as possible, because it was brilliant how it's just that one scene and it gives so much about each one of the characters.
You know, that came from research, and in my research I would ask the young people that I spoke to, I would say, okay, you're in this situation, these creatures have come down, what do you do? And I got each kid I spoke to describe what their home was like, who would be at home when they went home, what weapon they would use, where they would find it. So that all came out of real detail. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because by the end of the movie, you know about the parents of every individual. You know about Brewis and his dad's car. You know about Sam, who's on the phone to her mum at the beginning. So the family environment of every character is revealed as the narrative goes on, and that's entirely intentional, you know. But yeah, that all came from research, and again, that's something Edgar taught me. You know, when we were writing Ant-Man, when we started all those years ago, he stressed the importance of research, and I was like, research for a film about a man that shrinks to the size of an ant. But then, you know, the way he taught me to go about doing it was a real revelation to me, actually, and again, it's just that the whole film is a combination of truth and bullshit. And I supplied the bullshit, but then you got to go get the truth, because the combination of the two, I think, is, you know, the balance is good.
I had a question about, lately it seems that DVDs and Blu-ray, we get less and less of the special features, and this disc is obviously loaded. And especially we get less and less commentaries, and you did 3 of them.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, I think it's great. Obviously, are you a fan of them, or was it just something that you felt like you had to do?
I am a fan of them. I mean, I thought we had a particularly good gang of people, you know. I really wanted to do one with Edgar, and we go out of our way not to talk about what's happening on the screen with Edgar. It's basically like a kind of podcast that occasionally, and you know, I do radio in the UK, and I have a podcast in the UK, so I love radio and I love audio, and you know, the young actors are fucking great. They're so funny and full of energy, and I thought it would be interesting for people to hear them talk naturally, you know, and see the extent to which they use the slang and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was just good times, you know. What surprised me was how quickly it happens. Like, before you know it, it's, oh, fuck, the commentaries are at 7 a.m. tomorrow, and so I kind of wanted to plan them all and script shit, but I never got time, so we just kind of riffed them. But I know what you mean about DVDs and Blu-rays becoming less kind of souped up. But this is a souped up disc. We've got a really good making of, like a 58-minute making of that, because I love good making ofs. You know, I love Fincher's making ofs. I love the Three Kings making of. I was watching the making of that French film Point Blank the other day, which is really good. So yeah, we got a good 58-minute making of, 3 commentaries, a 10-minute thing about how he did the creatures. And we worked really hard on picture quality and really hard on sound quality. I'm a big home cinema enthusiast. I have a projector and I have a surround sound system. And all through the production of this movie, I would fantasize about the moment when I got home, put the disc in the system, and I wanted to make it good. You know, we spent a long time on the sound, and I'm very pleased with the reviews in the UK have been particularly strong, you know, technically about the surround and about the picture quality, which I'm very happy about.